Chris Mannix for the crossover alongside Ben Pickman and Howard Beck. Guys, the Damian Lillard disrespect continued last week, but it was Luka Doncic, not Lillard, named as a starter for Team LeBron in the All-Star game. The question then becomes, can Lillard, who's having another fantastic offensive season, ever win the MVP? Ben, what say you? How does Lillard become a top MVP candidate?
I mean, it's a great question, and I frankly wish we had an answer, right? You look at Damian Lillard, and he's been phenomenal again this season, and we shouldn't really be surprised, right? He's second overall in offensive real plus minus. He's third overall in scoring. The Blazers are winning, currently fifth in the Western Conference overall. He's averaging 8 assists, 4.5 rebounds. He's one of the league's best long-range shooters. He does it all, right? And Portland is great with him on the court, and so I wish I could say, maybe he'd be a little bit better defensively, but I'm afraid the answer might be like change your name to LeBron James or switch conferences and try to become, the top team in another conference hypothetically, but we know he wants to stay in Portland and has an affinity for that team, and so I have a really hard time seeing like how Damian Lillard elevates himself in the MVP conversation. He's been great for most years in the past, and that sustained greatness seems to be hurting him a little bit in this MVP conversation. We're kind of discounting him because he's averaging 30 points again for the second consecutive year because he's going to make another All-Star team. I just think, he might have to go up another level fully, but I don't really know what that is even going to look like. So I don't really know what it looks like to take Damian Lillard and put him in the top 1, 2, or 3 of this MVP conversation.
Well, let's just stipulate this off the top, by the way. Damian Lillard has the respect of NBA media and of his colleagues, the other players in the NBA, because the media and the other players all put him in as the starter for the Western Conference on our ballots. And that includes me. I voted for Lillard along with Curry on my ballot. So he has that respect. It's the fans who decided to go with Luka over him. That's how these things go. It's a popularity contest. When it comes to MVP, the only thing holding him back right now is really his team and the Blazers' record. I'm a stickler with this, and I think most voters tend to go this way most years. You've got to be top 2 or 3 in the conference, and the Blazers aren't there right now, but they can get there. Like, it is possible. Lillard individually has put up MVP-type numbers. Like, he's got the stats. It's more about now, does your team achieve enough in the regular season to put you firmly in the conversation? LeBron is there because the Lakers have been great from day one, though they've slipped a little recently. Embiid has been there because the Sixers have been leading the East. That's the way these discussions unfold, and I'm totally fine with that. So the onus is then on Lillard and the Blazers to be in that conversation, to be top 3, top 4 at the least in the West when all is said and done. And that's possible. It's also possible some of these other candidates and their teams will slip. The Lakers could backslide. LeBron could backslide. Embiid could backslide. Kawhi and Paul George could take votes from each other. Jokic and the Nuggets are still underperforming. So there's a path there, but the Blazers have to win more.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't want to call it the clearest path for Damian Lillard, but it's a clearer path for Lillard to win MVP than he's had probably in recent years, because I think the field is starting to open up a little bit. I think LeBron, especially if he puts up some wacky numbers while AD continues to be out, he could start to pull away. But, Giannis has fallen back to the pack a little bit. Durant's had some injury issues. You mentioned possibly splitting the vote in LA between Kawhi and Paul George. Even James Harden thrusting his way into the conversation with the way the Nets have played over these last couple of weeks. This is a chance, but it does, to your point, Howard, come down to team success. I mean, he being Lillard, has to push the Blazers into that, I think, top 2 to get some consideration. Because then, if not, you're talking about competing with, like Rudy Gobert is someone I think deserves consideration for MVP the way he's played during this season. So I think, Ben, it's got to be a top 2 seed for the Blazers. And that means CJ McCollum coming back and playing out of his mind. Some of the other guys that have been banged up playing well. Carmelo continuing to play well. He's got to get inside that top 2, or I don't see him getting the MVP.
But I wrestle with that because their record isn't that much worse than, say, the 76ers. And, right, Joel Embiid has been phenomenal this season. He's averaging 30 points per game. He's averaging more than 11 rebounds. He's punishing players on both ends of the floor. But Portland isn't that much far off, record-wise at least, compared to Philadelphia. And, yes, they play in different conferences. But, I just kind of struggle with the idea that it's going to take a Utah Jazz-like streak, the Blazers winning 20 of 22 games and jumping up in the Western Conference standings to kind of get Lillard that narrative, right? the narrative behind him to get him this MVP award or get him even higher in the conversation. I just think he's been so phenomenal in some ways, and you guys are voters, and you let me know, are we discounting him for his continued greatness, for being tremendous once again? And I feel like in some ways Damian Lillard is a victim of his own success in so many ways.
I mean, think. Go ahead,
Chris. It's possible that we have all gotten a little bit numb to Lillard's heroics, right? Every single night, it seems like, because I think it is literally every single night, he's hitting big-time clutch shots. Sometimes in a win, sometimes in a loss. But every night, Lillard is delivering not just in volume, but timely shots. And maybe we're a little numb to that. Maybe we're not appreciating that enough. But the bottom line with this MVP discussion is and always has been, your team has to perform at a high level. You have to be top 2 or 3 in your conference. In a normal season, you got to be a 50-plus win team. The Blazers have often struggled to be there. And this season in particular, again, Lillard has the individual production that puts him in the conversation conceptually. But the MVP comes from a top tier of teams. And if the Blazers aren't there, then he necessarily slips on the ballot to the 3rd or 4th spot.
Yeah, it takes a unique season to overcome a lesser place in the standings like Russell Westbrook had several years back, where he averaged a triple-double. Otherwise, you got to be top 2 or else you're not going to win that MVP. For more, check us out over at SI.com.